Welcome to the Premium Mindset, the weekly podcast where homegrown entrepreneurs and business owners Evan Ritchie and Cameron Bodden share the good, the bad, and the ugly of modern entrepreneurship and reveal what really happens behind the scenes of their personal and professional lives. As owners of two of America's fastest growing and most disruptive companies, Coconut Cleaning and Green Mango Pest Control, stay tuned for real stories, struggles, insight, and advice from real entrepreneurs in real time.
Tighten up. Be serious. I started singing earlier, Good Charlotte, but she didn't really appreciate it. I said paper or plastic, don't matter, she'll have it. Girls don't like boys, girls like cars and money. Boys will laugh at girls when they're not funny. No? Good Charlotte? K. R.I.P. So... All right, don't get serious. Don't get tight.
Come on, Evan.
Oh. Good afternoon.
Oh, my.
Okay.
The bloopers you can make at the beginning is just unbelievable with him getting prepped and ready.
I just get like anxiety in my arms and my legs. And what's going on, everyone? I'm excited to talk about today's topic, which is the frequent question that Cameron and I get from individuals who are not only here at Height Farm, but also people in their teenage years or early 20s, and they're wondering, should I go to college? Should I stick with college? Or should I start a business? And we're hoping to offer our insight because I, unlike Cameron, have an associate's degree, and Cameron was never accepted.
What's the associate's degree in again? Anyways,
it was it was an associate's degree, and Cameron was never accepted into any college. And so taking that rejection, Cameron went and started Green Mango Pest Control. So we look forward to hit on every aspect of our take on the importance of college, the importance of education, and how you're going to pay for the things that you learn over time anyway. So where should you put your money and your time and your energy? So with that being said, Cameron, if you would like to maybe tee this off and speak to like the difficulty of rejection from college and why you chose to go the entrepreneurial route and take a gamble on yourself versus the traditional or safer path of college.
Yeah. I knew I would get rejected, so I'd even submit my request into college. But
sabotage.
After my mission, for me, my whole life was planned out. You go to elementary school, junior high, high school. For me, it was going on a mission and then come home. And a lot of people go to college. Yeah. And I remember being in that phase where it was just really just lonely because it was the first time in my life I didn't have the next step planned.
This was right after your mission.
Right after my
21.
mission. Yeah. For a while there, one day I was like, man, maybe I should go to college. I went to a community college down the road, got in the counselor's line, and immediately just felt this pit in my stomach. And I just thought to myself, this isn't me. I went back into the parking lot, and I called Alyssa, who was my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. And I was like, I'm sorry, as if it was an expectation that I had to do. But I just told her, I just know this isn't for me because of how I felt inside. And looking back when, you talked about how people come up and ask us, advice, hey, should I go to college and what should I do? I think it comes down to the type of person that you are. How do you learn? For me, I'm a very hands-on visual learner. And so school was always difficult for me. But I think a lot of people do learn in a classroom setting better than they do, visually. Yeah. And that's probably the biggest thing that I would determine if someone was asking me and help them understand, like, you have to educate yourself somehow. So you either go to college or you get ready because you're going to pay the price for sure.
I'm curious, like when you went to the line, did you even have like a path for like dentist, lawyer?
No, it was just,
you were going to go try to figure it out.
I didn't have a direction in business of where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. And the next step for a lot of people is college. And so I was almost just kind of sinking back into the norm of, okay, this is the next step. You go to high school, you go to college. And I just showed up. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't have any paperwork. I didn't know anything. But when I got in line, I was just like, this isn't right.
Yeah. And we joke about like the title of my associates, and I think that's what's funny about it is I truly don't know. I think it was business management, but I remember the actual path for me was a lot more up and down in terms of like I would start, then I would drop out. I would start and I would drop out. And so I actually got the associate's degree over like 5 years because I changed my degree like 5 separate times. But I remember the point in which I was very certain that I was going to drop out was when I was in a business analytics and leadership class. All the titles they come up with these days, but I was maybe 24 and I had done summer sales, a few corporate jobs, a few small business jobs. And I remember like listening to my teacher. The guy couldn't have been older than me. And I said, hey, like, have you ever had your own business or ran your own business? And he's like, well, no. Like, and this was in private. I wasn't trying to embarrass him. And I said, okay, so you're teaching about business, leadership, and analytics. Where do you get the information from? He's like, from the textbook. He's like, dude, I got my degree in like computer science. He's like, this was just a job. Like, I just remember like on the low, he was saying like, bro, like,
That's crazy that you were smart enough though to realize, okay, this guy, because I've never been to college, but like most teachers, when they get up, they're presenting as if they're the experts.
Right.
And if people have confidence, which is another topic that we can talk about it at another time, but as long as someone portrays confidence, you almost have to believe them because of how confident they are. But you were smart enough to be in the room and say, okay, this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about, but he hasn't even ran a company.
Yeah. I mean, the guy was showing up in Crocs every day. And I think it was
Crocs.
I love
They
Crocs.
had Crocs back then?
Yeah, they had Crocs. They had the version of Crocs. But I think for me, it was more, I didn't really know where I was going, and it's a community college. And so I think there's a difference between those teachers and like professors.
Okay.
But so he was like, hey, between you and I, like, this is the only class that that had available to teach.
Stop.
I swear. So I was like, dude, I think this is the last semester, and then I'm going to get my associates and bounce. And I went and did the last summer sales with a bigger sales pest control company.
Cool.
And then,
thanks, man.
Yeah, they were offering a Lamborghini to top rep. I think I sold like 200 accounts. It's close, but I did that, and then I did the Zeros thing. But I just remember thinking like, hey, I want the source of the information to be from people who are at milestones that I want to hit.
Yeah. That's why I believe mentors are so important. If I could go back to my previous self in 2010 and almost shake Cameron and say, hey, find a mentor that is a company that's been in business, a pest control business that's been in 4 or 5 years. Find someone and pick their brain, and don't be shy to ask the questions.
Yeah.
Too many times, a lot of people are shy to reach out or to have that mentor in their life. And I think it handicaps a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think, to be clear, I think you and I concluded as we were preparing for this podcast, if you're doing a specialty degree, doctor, lawyer, all those extremely regulated industries, medicine, whatever it might be, school for sure. However, I think too many people who are in that weird phase of, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, start going to school. And I think, in my opinion, that's a mistake, because I don't believe that is the source for where you want to decide if you should do school or not.
Yeah.
It took a lot of time, but I feel like the first person that really illustrated to me that I wanted to be around people who are achieving where I want to go was with Nathan.
Yeah.
And he
describe who Nathan is.
So Nathan was the Zero Res Phoenix franchise owner who we went to the same church, and he offered me a gig to start the Zero Res Tucson franchise with him, like under him.
But he approached you at church, right?
I was actually doing summer sales, and he called me. It's like, where do you go every summer that you and your family leave for 3 to 4 months?
Did you know who he was?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I would highlight. It's crazy, the trajectory of your life, because he reached out. What if you would have never reached out and you never reached out? And there's so many people around you that want to give back and want to contribute to you. But if you never ask, you never know what could happen. And that's what I tell a lot of people, is that there's so many great people around you that want to help and that have walked a mile in the shoes that you're wanting to walk. Just ask, be aware of it, number one. But number two, go and ask them, hey, what are you doing? Or how can I help? What can I do?
Yeah. And I think that's the true benefits of like what real education is. Because again, in my opinion, unless you're doing something very certified and regulated, we go to school to learn information, but you hope that the source of information is leading you in a direction you want to go. But Nathan was the first where he just taught me real life principles. I remember I was going down to Tucson to find a house to rent. And I just found a house, and he's like, did you negotiate the rent? I'm like, negotiate the rent? No. He's like, let me call them. I'll never forget this. He called the landlord, the owner of the home, who I already got approved for. And he said, hey, this guy, I wasn't his business partner. He said, it's my business partner. We're starting a small business down there. We intend to be there long term, but I need this first year rent. Instead of it being $2,000, I need it to be $1,500. And then at year 2, you can raise it to $2,400. And I was like, okay. And they were like $1,650. And he's like, okay, cool. I'm like,
that's cool.
Well, yeah. And it was that little example where I'm like, man, this guy had no education other than small business and entrepreneurship. And I knew at that moment that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be around people that were going to shorten the learning curve for me. And I felt like my experience and what little time of college I did, I just wasn't going to get there from any teacher, professor, at the level that I was in at. I wasn't going to get that from.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool that you were self-aware enough to realize that. Being a little bit vulnerable here, one of the challenges that I have with reading books or sitting in a classroom is the ability to stay focused and then retain what I've learned. I've noticed that you're amazing at, not only being diligent enough to read a new book. I don't know how often. It seems like at least once a week that you're reading a new book. Yeah. I could be wrong there, but attending, conferences to further your education. How important is that? And what's your driving factor behind it?
I was talking to Kate, our CMO, yesterday about this very topic. The desire for me to read and to retain comes from a place of insecurity, where I was told in first grade that I had a speech impediment because my mother was Hispanic. And so I had a hard time balancing going into school, but I guess I was told I had a speech impediment, and I was taken from a portion of the class during the day and put into this class with kids who like only spoke Spanish. And I remember thinking like, what is wrong with me? I know I'm speaking English, but it's not good enough. And so I remember probably all the way through middle school, even high school, that I said that's my identity, is I have a speech impediment. I'm slower to learn. And I made an effort to read nonstop. And if I ever, how like when you're reading past a page, you're like, I totally space on like what I just read.
You'll go back.
My rule is like I go back.
Yeah.
And then for things that I'm trying to, remember scripture mastery in high school? So I was number one. I'm proud of this. Number one scripture master every single year. And I did that because it wasn't competing. It was, I wanted to prove to myself that I could. And then what I ended up finding is that most anything I read, both spiritual and secular, ended up applying to some application of my life that day or that week. And I loved almost the game of reading something. And then I'm like, wait, this book just talked about this scenario, and it made me so excited. So I'm a huge advocate, especially this era of YouTube, Harvard releasing most of their education through PDFs, that people don't need to attend a university necessarily to learn what it is that they want to be a master of.
Yeah.
And conferences as well. I feel like you've accelerated that for me just because they cost so much money. A lot of these conferences from people that we really admire in the business world are thousands of dollars, $5,000, $10,000. And we've gone to a few this year. Mm-hmm. And the settings are different. And I think we've been able to learn what we appreciate. But what have you going from like Andy Elliott to the Muscle, Keaton, to Tommy, what have you learned from conferences that you've been able to like take and apply back into businesses, or have you not learned anything?
Well, a couple of things.
That sounded worse than it meant, but
No, but that's the challenge that I'm working on right now. So Jim Quick was at one of the events.
Yeah.
I've never even heard of him before, but he got up and he talked about his, past of limitless beliefs and having a speech impediment and his dedication and what he did. So now he's written a book about how to increase your ability to read faster, but also retain that information. And one of the things that stood out to me that he's saying is not only if you forget the last page, go back and read it, but write down what you learned from that chapter. But the number one thing, and I think you kind of said this, so I want to make sure I understand you correctly, but his thing is, hey, if you at least read for 15 minutes a day, it's like training your muscle. Like it'll get better and better and better. Like, do you believe that that's true? And now you're able to retain a lot of the information because of the number of books that you've read?
I would say that I can't speak to that too much, but I would say that I've developed.
I need you to say yes, man, because I'm committed to 15 minutes a day right now.
It's like
I just hope it's better.
Thing. What I can say is that over the time I've been able to develop the ability to read fairly fast, and almost I'm skipping over every few words, and my brain is like finishing the principle for me. So I've been able to retain faster and read faster. And then as I go listen to the book or do a quick SparkNote check, I'm like, dude, that's exactly what I got. But I kind of flipped through the page after a couple, like 10, 15 seconds. And I do believe it's more so I understand what this is getting to. And so my brain kind of completes the sentence and I move on to the next paragraph. And that's been pretty fun, but I don't know what that is exactly.
No, I love that.
Smart. I don't know.
To answer your question about the events, for me, what I've learned is that when you surround yourself with powerful people or people that, even if they aren't in a place where you want to be, but they're wanting to go, that person's going to rub off on you. And it aligns with my favorite quote about show me your friends and I'll show you your future. That's what I love about those events, is that you're around people that don't have to be there. College, yeah, you signed up, or maybe your parents pushed you to be there and you're dragging yourself to class. And events aren't like that. They paid their own way. They paid the $5,000. They paid for their plane tickets and the hotel. They're there to learn, and that's contagious. And then the second thing that I learned most from Tommy is he's the first one to say, hey, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but what I do better than anyone else is once I implement or learn a process, I implement it
fast.
I just move quickly, and I surround myself again with great people. He doesn't have people around him that are negative or that aren't going places. All the people that I've met, not even just Tommy, but all the successful people, their influence of people around them is what's making the difference. And when I look back on my life, I didn't seek out a mentor in business that was in a place where I wanted to be. But luckily, by chance, I had this core group of friends where they were all going places. And one friend had already arrived and was successful, and that it was a healthy competition. Not I want to be better than Rob or James or Craig. It was just, hey, we're all going places. And so on the weekends or during the week, it wasn't. And I use video games just because like my upbringing, I just didn't put. My mom made it seem like that was of the devil. We just didn't play video games, but it's not like we were just sitting around drinking, doing drugs, playing video games. Like we were up to things. We are furthering our education and helping each other be better. And that's what it's all about as you grow up, as you're running your business. If your friends are always trying to get you to come over at 6:00 and go play video games or whatever, and you need to work and that's taking away from your end goal, I would think about that.
I love that. And I've always told that to you, or at least my observation outside looking in is that, I don't know to the individual personal lives of all your friends, but outside looking in, they're all very successful in their own rights. And what's been cool is that we've been able to benefit from some of them in their own respective fields of work, from Craig in insurance and Rob, who, I've told you has been almost a mentor, at least like the 5 or 6 moments I've had with him. He's been able to help shorten the learning curve. But bottom line for people that want to know what the summary is on events, I've likened it to like, those little things on the Hot Wheels racetracks where it's like that random little pod that you put in the middle of the track and it accelerates it. Yeah. That's what I think those little events are, is that you just surround yourself by people that are going in the same direction, but they're going at it in different ways. And it's an accelerator of like, dude, I really want to keep going. I want to go faster. And so go to events, especially free events. There's a lot of local events, but also look to the entrepreneurs in your, social media. They often hold seminars, things like that. And then I think we were going to briefly highlight, obviously, where I excelled very well in what I took away from college.
We're going to highlight what I did so great.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about me for a second. And this is where I feel like I offered the most to you, and that was Excel. Doing Excel sheets and reports, because that was like the only thing that I've ever done in college that I've ever done in business. And that was, I remember showing like summary things that I'm like, hey, I know how to do, this is our job average, and I can click on that button. I know that it'll do the average.
The most basic function.
The most basic functions. You and Dusty were like, hey man, we want to see like job average reports. That was my biggest takeaway. I'm like, dude, I know this. I don't know business, but I do know that I could get you our job average. And it was a very rudimentary thing, but I often laugh where I tell my kids, like when I'm talking to them and they're just stressing out about homework or something. And I'm like, hey, buddy, do the best you can. You work hard, but did you know that you're probably not going to use any of this? And he's like, no way, Dad. No way. Like, you're telling me I'm never going to.
See, that would work for your son, but Banks would be like, okay, cool, I'm not doing it.
Okay, cool, I'm going to go play basketball. But let's briefly talk about that. We often employ people who have degrees. We employ people who have a wide background from different finance degrees, as well as our CFO. He just hired I forget her position. What's it called?
I don't know.
Yeah. It's an assistant to him or something, but she just got her master's degree in finance.
Yeah.
So we benefit from a lot of people who have gone to college. We've used basic functions, but again, my advice as far as college goes is you have a lot to learn that you can learn from the internet, but I'm not necessarily sure that you need to go. But I'm also scared saying that because
I think it's great depending on your end goal. But a lot of people don't realize that if they choose college first, you're gonna have to go through the 4-year degree of college and then start your business and go through the 4 to 5 years of business education of starting a company. And that's not me saying, oh, just jump in, because the learning curve of business could be 4 to 6 years. Either way, you have to further educate yourself through seminars, through books, through mentors, having good friends around you. College can do that for you. But if you're a visual learner like I am, it's probably not the best thing for you.
Okay, so let's get personal. Inside the Baden residence, what's your take on school with your children?
I highlight the certain aspects that I feel like they will use later in life. Right now, with how old my kids are, it's basic reading and math. But like my nephews, I've emphasized the importance of certain topics, and I think that's important for them.
So would you say, like, speaking to your nephews, what, 14, 15, 16?
13 and 14.
Okay. They're like, Cam, I really don't know what I want to do. It's not a doctor. It's not a lawyer. And I really want to set myself up for success. My parents really want me to either go to school or start a business.
Yeah.
What's
so
your
what
take?
I told them, and it's been a learning curve this year while we've done this, is highlighting the importance of just reading and writing and communication. And so it's like, hey, science, do your thing. But if you only have so much time, like dedicate a little more time to this. Math, I don't know what grade, but at a certain point you have to be sharp enough to do, your basic stuff. But like at James, our CFO level, don't worry about it. You can hire people to that point. And so for me, it's allocating the time. If you only have 5 hours a day to dedicate to certain topics, like what are the ones you are going to use in business?
So Cameron, I mean, we've been talking for 15, 20 minutes. Is your summary, don't go to school?
This isn't your permission slip that you don't have to go to college. I'm just pointing out everything that if you do go to college, make sure that's the way that you learn. And if you don't think, oh, I don't have to educate myself. You're going to have to further educate yourself in a different manner if you want to be successful, period.
If we were to, hypothetically, if we were to have a professor here and say, hey, what's 2 or 3 very important principles people are going to learn from school or this degree? Okay, he would answer according to his experience. What I want to ask you...
Hold on, I want to point out, I think I've never been to school, so I don't know, but I think that's the benefit, is that they go through all the different scenarios and things that could happen. And maybe you only pick up on 2 or 3 of those. In business, you will see all of those, and you'll have to pay for it with your own money if you don't, excel at those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'd say is the benefit of going through those scenarios is that you're aware of them. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah. So in business, when something comes up, if you went to college, you'd be like, oh yeah, I think I remember a little bit about this in college. But as an entrepreneur, James brought up the black swan. And I'm like, black swan, what is that? Oh, here's a book. I'm like, okay, here we go, man. A week later, he's like, have you read the book yet? I'm like, no. It's like, you need to read the book. Black swan, that's what's going on with agave right now. I'm like, all right, I can't wait to dig in. But if I went to college, I'm sure they talk about those events, the black swan in business.
Yeah. So I think that in business, it is it's a collection of people who offer a wide variety of background, but at the end of the day, the business doesn't exist if there isn't an entrepreneur who decides to make a gamble on himself. And in my experience, because I did a little bit of college and I did business now, I feel like the lessons I've been able to learn and the feeling of responsibility towards the people I work with has been the greatest experience for me to learn who I really am. And I can't say that I couldn't have learned that in school.
Yeah.
But I would say the long, restless nights of not knowing if I'm going to be able to keep certain employees or not knowing if we're going to make payroll, what those nights turn into in terms of action and systems and operations, and then to see 2, 3, 4 months down the road your business start to flourish and grow, there is no better experience for me. And to be totally honest, when there's people around me who are like, man, I can't imagine what you're going through, I wouldn't ask for anything different. Yeah. I feel alive, and in school personally I felt dead. And business is what makes me feel alive, the highs and the lows.
Yeah, it's just a higher state game that you're playing.
Yeah.
You're not doing a study in books and a mock-up in your class. It's like, hey, this is real life. This is people's paycheck.
Yeah.
This is the customer experience, everything.
Yeah. I mean, but who do we run to sometimes when we need help? We call an attorney.
My mommy.
Your mommy. Or your mom. But sometimes we're in need of those professional assistants and structuring the business and things like that. However, if you could just wrap this up with, maybe a principle or two that has really resonated with you that you've been able to appreciate most in your life that's come from business, what would it be?
Man, I think the power of being able to make and keep commitments on an individual level and as a company, if you can push that off to your people, like think how powerful you could be as an organization if everyone made and kept commitments down to starting a meeting on time, showing up, just in our manager meeting this morning. What did James Cook say? Hey, We need to set the standard. People are coming in at 8:05, 8:10. Our phones turn on at 8 o'clock. I need everyone in their seats at 8. And I'm sitting there saying, hey, you can't be it's impossible to be exactly on time. You're either early or late. So you might as well be 5 minutes early.
Yeah. I think I've always said that a business is a vacuum chamber. And a lot of times if I'm upset with my leadership team, they often embody principles that I don't really like about myself. Yeah. And so it's a matter of taking ownership and understanding that if you want to reap the benefits from your business, you have to be the change that you want to see, and you have to be the peak standard of performance, because everyone below you will operate at 10-20% less than you. And it's the ultimate look in the mirror and say, what do I want from this? And what do I want 5 years down the road? And I have to do the work now to get what I want later. And it's the ultimate investment in yourself.
So if you go to college just to check the box for your parents and you're just going through the motions, you just wasted 4 years, critical years of your life. Don't do it. But if you don't go to college and you're not committed to further educate yourself, it's going to be a long road for you.
If you don't find an alternative education and it's not college, like, you're doing yourself a disservice.
You're screwed.